Hi again. I'd like to continue the discussion of WordPress and making a custom theme. And in the last video, I set up my basic theme and I just put a couple styles in there and gave it a custom font. And in this video, what I'd like to do is I'd like to start talking about the layout. And then also talk about customizing index.php, where we're going to do a lot of work because we have to, write HTML to set the structure of the page. So what I have here is I've got my basic theme, and what I want to do first is I want to go get a grid system to work with. And you can make your own grid system if you want. You can download pretty much any grid system. For this example, I'm going to use the Uncemented Grid. I like this one, so I'm going to use it. It's very similar to a lot of other grid systems. So, if you see this, you could probably translate this to just about anything. So here I am at the uncemented.com, and I want to download their file. So I'll go to download, and then there they are. So here's the files here. And the one thing that's a little confusing about the Uncemented Grid is which file to use, right? Because they have all these files here, and we actually don't want any of those. And then when I go into the assets folder, it's got a bunch of other files. We actually want to go into the style sheet file, and then when you get, or folder, and then when you get into the style sheet folder, like, my God, there's so many files in here. Which one are we going to use? Okay. Well, let me explain what some of these are first. Okay, so the files at the top here are used for special stuff. So there's a reset. Anything that says RTL means right to left. Uncemented Grid is built on float left, but sometimes you want to arrange your stuff float right. And if you're float right, those are all the files that are RTL. So they're just floated right instead of left. And then I think the demo CSS is for their demo example here. So it's just extra styles for that. If you have your own reset or you don't want to use a reset, then you can use your own reset. The reset isn't important. And if you have your own text styles, you don't need the text CSS. So the rest of these are just different versions of the Uncemented Grid that work in different situations. Like this one, doesn't work on IE7, and it's right to left. Okay? So what I think I want to get is I want to get this one down. Some of them also include styles for tablets because it's responsive, so it has a breakpoint for the tablet size and a breakpoint for the phone size. And there's some class names that deal with the tablet size. So I think I'm going to get this one right here, Uncemented Grid responsive tablet no IE7. I know it's a little long for a name there, but this is the one I think that I want right here. Uncemented Grid responsive tablet no IE7. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to copy that to my theme folder. Okay, so here's my theme folder here. There it is, and I think I'll just drag this file into the folder here, and then it'll get uploaded to my site. And you know what? I'm going to copy the name because I don't trust myself to write all that. Okay, so I'll copy that. And now I need to create a link to this file. Okay, so I'm going to go into my index.php file. So here's index.php. So what we're looking at is I'm working live off my server. So this file right here is what we're seeing in the browser. I mean in the editor. So this is the exact file that we're working on. Okay, so now I want to link to my to the Uncemented Grid. Why don't we put a comment in here to remind us that this is Google Fonts, right? There's the Google Fonts, and then here we'll say grid, right? And what I want to do is I want to say link rel style sheet, href, and then the href here is the tricky bit. Okay, so in this case we're different from the Google Fonts, right? So the Google Fonts are linking to a style sheet that is somewhere else on someone else's domain from a full path, so we can just use that path, no problem. what I want to do now is I need to link to this style sheet in the folder in my theme directory, right? And, realize that if I give this theme to someone else, that folder is going to be potentially in a different location, right? So, so how do we do that? Right, because there it is there, but it could be in anybody's theme directory, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to use a template tag, and it's going to be PHP blog info, right, just like this. And don't put a space around the PHP tag here, because if we do, then we'll have a space in the path name. It'll be the equivalent of putting a space here, right? If I put a space there, it'll be the same as putting the space here, and then that ends up, making the path, undecipherable to the browser, right? So no spaces here inside the quotation marks, and you can have actually have extra spaces here. That doesn't matter, but just here between the little arrows and the quotes is where we want to be careful. And then inside blog info, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say template _ directory, okay? And there's a couple different ways to get the path. I always use this one. But there we go, blog info template directory. And that gives you a path to your template folder or your theme folder, okay? It gives you the full path, but it doesn't include a slash at the end. So we have to make sure that we put a slash here, okay? And then we're going to follow that with the name of the file that we want. This is a little hard to read because it's off the screen here, but this is where we had the href, and then we have, PHP blog info template directory / and then no spaces around the slash, and then the name of the file. And you can use this for any file. So if you have another CSS file that you want to link to, then you can use the same technique. Or if you just have some file in your theme directory that you need access to, you can use the same technique to get to it. Okay. So there we go. Right, I've pasted the name there, and now I'm ready to go. Let's see if it works. Right. I always like to test these things. So here's a way you can test this. Right. Even though it's not going to show anything in the browser yet, if I go to the browser and I refresh my theme, and then inspect my page, right? So I'll open up the inspector. If I look in the head of the document here, you'll see that these are the links that I created. So these two link to the Google fonts, and then there's the grid, and you can see this is the path. It's the full path. So blog info template directory gave me the whole path to the Uncemented Grid, right? So here's the whole path all the way down to here, and then there's the slash that we typed, and then there's the file name, Uncemented Grid responsive tablet no IE7. And now I'm curious, is that the right path? Does that file really exist? Well, if I click on it, for some reason it's not showing there. I think it's working, but usually you can click on this and it'll take you to that element. I don't know why it's not working for me today, but that would be a good way to test. I think that's pretty good though, so we'll stick with it, right? Okay. And then you can see this is where WordPress included some extra stuff through WP header, right? So all that stuff there was written by WordPress into our site. Okay. So so how do we get started with the Uncemented Grid? Okay, I'm going to probably break this into a couple videos, but let's just get the basic start here. So here's an example of the usage, and there's more to it than this, but this is kind of the, the simple, rundown of what you're going to do. So anything that wants to use the grid must be inside a grid container. And then once you're inside the grid container, you want to break up elements into blocks, and the blocks are broken up into 25 or 5% increments. So you can do 25%, 50%, 25%. Okay, and then if you want to see a demo, you can click on the demo button here, and you can see this is 100% block, 5%, 10%, 15%, right? And then it's responsive too. Okay, so you can see it kind of shrinks and grows as the browser shrinks and grows, right? Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So let's go back to my theme here, and let's get our basic grid happening. Okay, So here I am in my document, and what I need is I need a container, right? And I think I'm going to do the header as its own container, right? So I'll add a div in front of the container here, and a div behind the container for the header, right? So there I've got a div surrounding my header. And what I'll do is I'll give this guy class name, grid container, right? Just like we saw on this Unsemantic site. And then, I'll refresh it here. And now it's not much to see different, but you can see like this is now, I think it's 1,000 pixels or 1,100 or something from here to here, and it's centered on the page. And then that's the grid, right? So if I want to put these two elements side by side, I can say, I can add a grid element here, and what I think I'll do is I'll put a div here, and then I'll close it right here. So I'm just surrounding the H1, and then I'll give it a class name, and maybe I want this grid element to take up, oh, I don't know, 50%, right? So I'll say grid 50, okay? And then for the blog description, I'll add another div, and I'll give it a class name and say grid 50. So as long as, oops, that should be the dash there, right? Okay. So as long as the two, grid elements here add up to 100%, then they'll fit on the same row. Okay, so they'll go across. I'll have to also, do this to the stuff down here at the bottom, but for right now, this is going to be our grid, right? So I'll save that. We're just testing here, and hopefully that's going to move the blog description over here, so it's about 50% across the page, right? So we'll test it. Oh yeah, there we go, right? And so there you go. That gets you started on the Unsemantic Grid. We'll do some more with that in another video. I'm just going to try and keep these short, but that's your basic start there. Okay. You're going to use grid container for around anything that's going to use the grid class, and so I only need one grid container, and everything inside here can be a grid with percentage, right? And the percentages are in steps of 5. Except there is a couple special ones. So this one can be grid, like 33, and then you can also do grid 66. So this is a third, and this is 2/3. Okay, so and otherwise you can do 50 or 5% increments. Okay.